Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of Fan the Flames podcast. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Laura Jelly. Laura is a creative, she's a designer, she's an artist, but she's also an educator. And one of the things that Laura said a while ago in one of our conversations that I absolutely loved, she talked about this idea of that it's every kid has the magic, and it's our job to create the conditions to let that magic out. And I know one of the things that Laura and I talked a lot about in our initial conversation was this idea of, well, what are those conditions for the magic? What are those conditions that we need to be creative, and how do we kind of foster them and nurture them? So without any further ado, let me introduce Laura into the space. Hey, Laura, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. So, Laura, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you currently do? We might have a look at the journey of how you got there as well. But what does it look like to be Laura right now?
So I guess there's kind of two parts to that. My main job, if you like, is I'm marketing director for Ivy House. So we are I guess like a leadership development company. So we teach lots of large organisations. We teach their emerging talent, their future leaders, leadership and life skills. And then we work in schools, bringing exactly that kind of, I guess, like exec level development to people at the start of their journey. So we work with students aged 15 plus, teaching them the stuff that makes a really big difference to how their lives turn out. So that's the day job, if you like. And I feel very fortunate because I love it. And it's really varied. And it gives me an opportunity to work in a space that I'm really passionate about. And then the kind of side hustle, if you like, is something a bit more creative. And that could be anything. So I do illustration, drawing, painting, some bits of freelance costume work. So that's the stuff that adds a bit of variety. And I guess the kind of combination of those things is the stuff that makes my soul sing. So
Nice.
so yeah.
Love it. The combination of those things that make your soul sing. And I guess there's something really interesting about, finding that combination. And I wonder how many people that are watching or listening are searching for that combination. They have a job that they may enjoy or not enjoy, and they're not actually doing their side hustle. They're not doing that creative part of themselves, or whatever that side hustle might be. How did you sort of create or find the space or the conditions to allow your soul to sing?
So I think there were two things. What I tried to do was I never set out with an intention. I never went, here's the job I want to do. So every decision I made was kind of about following my heart. And that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but it was going like, this is the thing that excites me in that moment. And so the next step was never about the long-term goal. It was about going, yeah, that feels right. And that brings me a bit of excitement. Now, I've been lucky that I've always worked in jobs that I've loved for organisations that are amazing and really purpose-led. So there's been a lot of that has brought me joy. But then I guess what I really realised when I was at Ivy House is variety is really important to me. So what I noticed was kind of doing one job wasn't always it for me. And I had lots of conversations with friends who went, you should be doing a creative job. And I was like, I do have a creative job. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around marketing, but they went, you should be an interior designer or you should be an artist. And I went, do you know, it's not that. What I really want to be able to do is a bit of that. And a bit of the other stuff. So what I realized is actually you don't have to have one job that ticks all the boxes. Like you can get your boxes ticked in lots of different ways. So actually, sometimes that means I might do lots of freelance work in the side of 1 week. And then it might mean, I don't know, for the last month, for example, I've not been hugely creatively inspired. So actually, I've not done that stuff. And actually, I've got all my joy and all my boxes ticked from my day job, if you like. So it's actually the combination of both has meant actually it's worked really well for me. And I certainly found that when I left my previous job where I'd worked with a lot of young people, came to Ivy House and I was like, I don't get to work with kids anymore. Maybe this isn't the job for me. And then I went, actually, I could do that on the side. So why don't I became a brownie leader and a guide leader. And then it meant that I got that box ticked there, but I got the variety and the creativity and the writing. in my day job. So
So that's really interesting, because it's like you're in a job, you're going, doesn't tick all my boxes, and you go, so how do I get my boxes ticked, as opposed to going, when is my job gonna do this for me?
yeah, yeah,
So there's something about striving out and going, well, what do I want, and then creating it.
yeah, absolutely. I always remember Elka saying to my husband, he was talking about like the dream career, the one you like jump out of bed and you're like singing and dancing down the road. And she's like, actually, some people might have that, but that's not the reality. It's about like finding your, she called it the perfectly imperfect. And it was like, okay, so sometimes my job does mean that I spring out of bed. And sometimes there are bits of it where I go, oh, I'm not getting that. It doesn't mean the job's not right, but it means that I need to find a way to get that. So I thought that was quite an interesting concept.
I remember years ago coaching somebody who was thinking about leaving their job because they wanted more freedom and they wanted to go on more holidays, and they felt that their job was constricting and not allowing them to do that. And through the coaching process, they realized that actually their job could be the catalyst for that. So they started doing like lots of overtime, lots of extra shifts to build up a fund pot to then go on holiday. So they would go on like, long weekends and short breaks, and they were just traveling all the time. And they realized that actually their job didn't stop them from doing that. It was about how they were looking at it, how they perceived it, and how they acted upon it, that actually allowed them to have that joy that they were searching for. It wasn't giving something up. It was almost like adding to something.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's the acting upon it. I think it's really easy to sit here and go like, the job's not giving me what I want. And so then I go, I guess you've got a bit of responsibility to go, how do I allow it to be the job that serves me better? Or how do I get that in other ways? And it's so easy to just expect that that's given to you. But I guess there's a lot of learning that comes with that. Like, it's quite difficult when you feel the boxes aren't being ticked, but you can't figure out why. So there's a bit of discovery around like, what does tick my boxes, that you have to go on in order to be able to be more proactive, to take more ownership over those being ticked.
And I really like that idea of, being proactive to explore what ticks my boxes, because we may have a sense that it's being creative, or being a writer, or being a photographer, whatever that thing might be. But unless we go on that journey of discovery, we don't find that thing. And I reckon that a lot of people are a bit kind of hesitant, going, but what if I don't like it? And it's like, but that's great, because you realize that that's not a thing that you want to do. So you can try things and go, do you know what? That's not for me. I'm going to do something else. And there was something you said earlier as well. You said, well, a couple of things you said, but one of them was that purpose-led organizations. And you kind of threw it in there like, you just happen to work at purpose-led organizations, but I would imagine that that's part of what you were looking for. There was something in you that went, well, this is the kind of spaces that I want to work in, as opposed to I'm just going to have a job.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. So my gran was a teacher, and she talked about specific stories of where she changed kids' lives. She always talks about this moment where she used to get these polystyrene ceiling tiles that used to get. They used to be all the trend, and she cut them up and she made them into like snowflakes, and she hung them all from the ceiling. And she remembers a child coming into the assembly, and she said, "Miss, you've just made it so magical." And there was just something that, like, I don't know, deep inside, I was like, that's the job I want to do, is to create a space where kids can like just have that little moment of spark. And so that was it. I found that with organizations, is like, I wanted that spark. I wanted that moment of connection and magic where it was more than just a job. It was about creating spaces for like a transformation. And so for me, it was really important to work for a purpose-led organization where it was about something bigger. And yes, it's important to hit targets and drive the business forward, but there had to be something bigger. There had to be that moment of magic that we created for other people. So I've been really fortunate that I've always been able to work for organizations like that, but that's been quite deliberate for me.
Yeah. And I love that idea of, what's the magic and how do we create that magic, and how does the organization we work for inspire magic to exist? It sort of makes me think back to, I hadn't thought about this before, but a lot of the work that I did with young people and theatre and stories was all about creating these moments of magic.
Yeah.
These moments that something magical happens, there's a story, they perform something, and then it kind of disappears, and it's this kind of magical memory
Mm.
that we can hold on to, and kind of recognizing that that can have a huge impact on somebody, and we're not even aware of it.
No, and it sometimes it's something really ordinary, but for somebody else that's a really extraordinary moment. And I think our job as people, our job as educators, is to create opportunities for that moment of magic. I ran an event last week for educators, and we had the head of young people from Sky there, and I said, what's the thing you're looking for when you hire school leavers, grads, apprentices? And she said, if I'm honest, the thing that we're looking for is the thing that these young people were born with. It's their magic, their sparkle, it's their passion. They're born with that stuff. And our job as educators is to keep that spark alive and nurture it. I thought, how interesting that it's so often seen that our job is to add and teach them different things. But actually our job is to go like, you've got it. How do we keep it alive? So I love that idea.
You know what, this is so lovely and so relevant, because I think about Fan the Flames, both as a podcast and both as coaching, that I think that what I'm doing is going, you've already got your spark, and actually it's about noticing your spark, paying attention to that spark, and then going, right, what do I need to turn this into a roaring fire? Do I need a coach, or do I just need to read a book? Do I just need to listen to somebody talking about what they do? And that's the thing that makes that spark come alive. Because I also think that we've got all of this stuff inside of us. And part of the challenge is we've got all of these worldly conditions and societal conditions that are placed upon it that sometimes can dampen it. Or we've had a we've had a letdown, we've had a disappointment, something hasn't worked out, and so we go, okay, I won't do that, I won't go there. Or somebody has said, don't do that, that's not a life. I remember my dad, God bless him, used to say, have a trade, because that's the way to have a career. And a little bit like you, I've just done things that I've enjoyed, that have excited me, and that's led to me doing some really interesting and wonderful things. But I've never gone, right, now I'm going to do this, and now I'm going to do it. I might have a moment, I go, oh, I'm going to do this project. But there are these kind of flashes in the pan, as it were.
I think that the challenge is we have such a narrow view. So we go, okay, so careers are linear. That's a really traditional view. That's not how they are. We have this view that you're supposed to leave school and you should know what you want to do. Or lots of parents, and certainly was the case for my dad, was like a really specific view of what a good career looks like. And actually that didn't work for me. And so we're in the system that was designed based on an old world, and that's not where we are. So when I said to him, he was going, okay, you've done your A levels, you've done law and government and politics and English language, all this stuff. He's going, so you're going to do a law degree? And I was going, I don't think it's that. That doesn't do it. That doesn't bring me that moment of excitement. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do a foundation art degree. Give me a year, and then I'll do the law degree. And I finished it, and I was like, Dad, I don't want to do the law degree. I want to do costume design. I remember I went to see The Lion King, and Julie Taymor, who's the designer, my heart melted looking at these designs, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And he said, but how do you get a career in that? And I was like, I don't know, but right now I don't need to know. I'm just doing the thing that feels right. And I couldn't have foreseen that I was going to end up here. But because I just followed those moments of sparkle and magic, it's led me to something I really love doing.
And I wonder how many of us deny those moments. I wonder how often we kind of go, I would love to, and then we don't act upon it. And I recognize, I'm not saying that we can just leave our jobs and just do whatever we want. I recognize there are things around us that may feel like trappings, bills, to pay and all of that, or a family to support. But my question is, how can we search for that a little bit more? How can we sprinkle it in a little
Mm.
bit more? You know, you were able to say to your dad, I don't want to do this, I want to try this. And he kind of agreed to that. You know, I know that some people, their parents are like, no, there is no discussion. You're
Yeah.
going to go and do that. And they decide your trajectory. And often in my coaching, I'll be working with people that have been doing the traditional thing that they're supposed to do, and they've reached a point where they're going, I'm just really unhappy with this and I don't know what to do. And often it's about going, well, what's that thing? What's your magic? What's your spark? What's your flame? Let's
Yeah.
go back to that and look at how can we get that into your life.
And I think the reality of it is it's not always easy. Like, it takes courage to have the conversation with parents who are very set on your career path. It takes courage. In my husband's case, he'd fallen into being an estate agent because there was job security and there was a good salary. 10 years in, he hated it. And I remember when we first met, he'd probably done it for about 7 years. And he said, it's all right for you. Like, you're in a job you love. I will just never love my job. And I was like, well, yeah, if that's what you truly believe, then you will stay in this job forever and you will never love the job. But you know, he was 27 at the time. I was going, you're writing off your whole life. Like, is that really what you want to do? And he said, I believe only 5% of people ever really love their jobs. And it got to a place where he'd done it for 10 years and he had a horrible experience at work. And he went, do you know what? It's not this. This isn't making me happy. In fact, it's doing quite the opposite. And it took a lot of courage for him to quit. And he quit and he went on this discovery of going like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know all the jobs. But here's the job that excites me and it works with my strengths and my passion. So I'll give that a go. And, you know, like 3 years down the line, it was the best thing he ever did. And now he's working in the creative industry. He's doing amazingly. He's brilliant at what he does. And I just see this transformation, but it took the courage to start with to go, right, I need to do something different. I really do.
And I, you know, one of the things that I kind of recognize in that is that he had your support in that. And, you know, I wonder how many of us are going, I want to do this thing. And we look around and we go, well, who's going to help me? Who's going to support me? Who's going to hold me up when it's the dark days? And, you know, I think it's really important for people to find support, you know, whether it's a coach, whether it's a friend, whether it's a group. You know, there are so many groups of people trying something. You know, what's that group that you can join where they're going to have your back in that pursuit of something? Because, you know, you said there, as you were talking about your husband, there was a glow about you. There was a real kind of, you know, he's doing this and this is who he is now. And this is how brilliant he's doing. And I sort of go, when we do that thing that connects our passion and connects our strength and makes our soul sing and makes our heart sing, we become different people. We become, I guess, in a sense, who we truly are, and we become joyful. And in that, joy kind of exudes not just for us, but for everybody that's around us.
It's interesting because I think it makes a real difference when you have a support. So when you have a coach or you have a partner or you have a parent. But I think that if you're open to the possibility of there being another way, that there can be like gentle nudges in different forms. So you don't need a big cheerleader on the sideline going like, you can do it and, you know, quit your job and I'll pay for you. Like, that's not the reality of how it works. But I went to the open art studios at the weekend, and I went to an artist's house at the end of the road, and I'd never met this woman before. And we chatted away, and I suddenly went, do you know what? I could do this. And she was like, you could. It's really straightforward. Here's how you do it. And I was going, yeah, maybe I could. And she, do you know, some woman I never met before gave me a gentle nudge to do the thing that actually I should have been doing. But I think had I not been open to it, had I not been listening for the gentle nudge, that would have just kind of passed me by. So I think it's really, really important that you have conversations, that you're open to the possibilities, but that also you can see there's a support network probably greater than you can appreciate that's out there for you.
And that sort of idea of serendipity, when we're open to it, you meet people that go, oh, you do that, oh, I've got a mate who, or I know somebody you can have a conversation with, or I've got a space where I've got a bit of equipment you can use. We just never know. But it's being open, as you say, being open to that and noticing those gentle nudges or those little whispers that kind of make you go, oh, wait a minute, there's a possibility, there's a thing I can try. And I think there's also something about sort of somehow owning or capturing what you might like. I've got what I call my secret wishes book. And in this, it's full of like my secret desires, my wishes, my dreams, my hopes, and I just kind of keep them in here.
Yeah.
And I go through it from time to time, and it's just a space where I go, oh, that's what I would like to do, and it kind of keeps the engine turning and the kind of a bit of fuel to the fire. But it's also a space where I can put my secrets and allow them to exist somewhere that then helps me notice the nudges or the whispers out in the world.
I love that. And it's, again, Elka says, like, it's an everyday job, but it's about like reveling in it. It's about creating the space for you. That book is like the gentle nudge. And sometimes it's about going to places where you go, oh, it's this. But it's important. What I've discovered recently is you've got to create the space to stay there, because it's really easy to kind of fall out of love with your passions or to forget what they are, to disconnect with stuff that makes your soul sing. And sometimes you just need to go, oh, it's that, because that's the stuff that gets edged out.
And there's two thoughts there. One is that when we get busy, we often stop doing the thing we love and we put it to one side. And then years later we go, I used to do a thing. What happened to that thing?
Yeah.
And the other thing you said there was about the experiences, about going, like you said, you went to the open artist studio. Going to things that both speak to your passion, but also that just create curiosity in you, and just going and seeing, whether it's an art gallery or a museum or a marketplace, but going somewhere just to kind of go, what do I pick up here? What do I notice? What captures my eye or my interest? And allow that to fuel you. Because I think it's those experiences with and without others that are part of that fuel to where we go to and what we do and how we can carry ourselves and that energy through to make something happen.
Yeah. And it's really important, because the challenge for me is that I have a real driver around certainty and security. So I'm going, I love routine. I love knowing what I'm doing. There's an element of going, like, I go out and I do this at 6 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock I walk the dog, and then I start work at 9. And actually in that routine and in that security, there's a bit of safety, but it edges out everything else. Like, once you fall into that pattern of going, this is just how my life is, there's no space to rediscover the other stuff. And so I think where I'm at right now is going, actually, in lots of ways, I have forgotten the stuff I really love. And I'm so busy and I'm so stuck in my routine, there's no space to rediscover it. And the space feels quite scary. Like, that idea of a human being and sitting in space and not scrolling and not doing and not reading and not listening. But for me, it's going, actually, that space is not a luxury. That space is a challenge, and it's an absolute necessity to be my best self. But I'm still working on creating that space.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things that I notice is I love when I open my diary and it tells me what I'm doing that day or that week. And then I have to kind of force myself to go, you have to have a day where there's nothing in the diary. so that I kind of just sit around, maybe read a bit, maybe go for a walk, maybe do some mind mapping or some thinking, or just to allow the kind of, I don't know what it is. I guess it's the little voices inside to kind of to have a space to come out, and part of that's, I guess, meditation as well. That kind of sitting, doing nothing, and just pondering and allowing things to wander and come in and out without any attachment, and then going, okay, so what is it just to do nothing and not
Mm,
to scroll and not to watch TV and do all of those things, which are, they're all fine, but it's like, how do you come back to you? And I love what you're saying there. It's like that space to just be me.
mm, mm,
And I guess as a creative or as an artist, there's that sort of, there are conditions that need to be created for your art to flow. So there
mm,
was things that you need to do to go, right, that's going to enable me to
mm,
do my art. But it
mm,
might not show up today, but it might show up next week. But I've got to show up for it to show up.
mm. And I think it's a real challenge we've got with how we work now, is there's not the space in the day. With lots of us working at home, I'm going through my to-do list, I'm back to back in meetings, and I don't have the moment where I'm going to get a cup of tea where I go, I've just had an idea. And that's where I do my best thinking. I remember in my last company, I came up with a campaign idea, and it came to me when I was on a spin bike in the morning. And had I scheduled in the time to come up with a campaign idea, would it have happened? Absolutely not. So I think there's a real challenge for individuals who are working from home, and for organizations who have a lot of people who are working from home, to go like, how do we still afford people that space, the time away
Mm,
from the computer where ideas can come in,
mm,
and people can work far more efficiently and effectively without having to have stuff in the diary.
yeah. Yeah. It sort of, it makes me think about, whether you get up and do meditation, or you get up and do yoga, or you go for a run, or you do journaling. It's that space where where the mind has the space to just wander and just to percolate and explore without there being, I've got to do this thing.
Mm,
I've just started. I've just started the Couch to 5K, and one of the things that I've decided is that I'm not going to listen to music or a podcast.
mm,
That I'm just going to listen to the guy that's telling me when to rest and when to run. I'm just going to listen to that and just allow the rest of the space just to be space,
mm.
and just notice what happens in that.
Yeah, I remember my coach saying to me that we all have this kind of wisdom within us, and when we get quiet, there are these kind of, she described it as like little fireflies that come in and nudge you forward, but you have to create that kind of quiet and that space.
Mm,
I think the challenge is we're so used to a system that goes like, 2 years, you're going to work really hard on your GCSEs, you're going to finish them, you're going to have an exam, that's done. Then on to your A levels, you're going to have 2 years, you're going to work really hard, exam, that's done. Like, that's how we're conditioned. And actually, that doesn't work for most people. And I remember it, the thing I've really learned for myself is when I feel I need to speed up, that's my tell I need to slow down.
mm,
Like when you forget the word or forget a name and someone's going, come on, you know that person, remember they did that and they said this, and I'm going like, stop forcing it and it will come.
mm,
So I had an interesting conversation with my mum about that the weekend. She said, my memory's terrible, and why can't I remember that person's name? And I'm going, just stop. What I've learned is if you stop, it will come to you. But it's the opposite of what we're taught. And at school we teach in a way that goes, come on, you know the answer, give me the answer. And there's
mm.
pressure in front of everyone. That doesn't bring the best out in anyone.
Yeah, I remember one of my sort of mentors, and actually one of the reasons why I got into coaching in the first place, Matilda Joubert. I remember one of the programs I was on with her, we were working with education leaders, and she did this thing where she was like, "What's your challenge? Everybody, write down what's your biggest challenge right now. Look at your challenge, fold it up. Let's all go for a walk for an hour." And then we all went for a walk, and then we came back and she says, "What do you think of your challenge now?" And everybody's going, "Oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that," because we weren't working on our challenge, but somewhere the brain was just, or the body in its wisdom was just doing its magic. But we needed to almost get out of the way to allow it to do that. And if we're trying to think it through all the time, we can get in the way. Now, obviously, there are things, where times when we need to sit and think and plan something, but there's also creating that space just to allow nothing to happen so that something can happen.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge is how we can do that in like a working day, how we can do that in a system where it's like it's 9 to 5. These are the hours that you're here, and I guess that there's a bit of going like, I have to be okay with that. I have to take ownership for understanding how I work best and designing a day that allows me to do that. So for me, I go like, actually, if the creative inspiration is not coming, I'm not going to sit out here and force it, because I tell you now, I'll do a terrible piece of art and then I'll just get angry at myself. But maybe what I'll do is I'll flick through Pinterest, and sometimes, I'll do it for hours and I'll go, but I haven't come up with anything. And then the next day I go, oh, I saw that thing and now I've got this idea. That's when you do it.
So that feels like that's kind of like creating the kindling for the fire. It's like you've gone, right, we're going to have a fire today, and you go, oh, the fire's not quite working. I'm just going to go and collect a few bits. And then the next day you go, oh, now I've got all the material I need to build my fire.
Yes, I love that.
And also there's something about, when I used to go to Ireland a lot to visit Luke, my son, and we used to stay in farmhouses and we used to build fires in the fireplace. That was our thing. And I remember that sometimes if you put too much stuff in, if there's not enough space, then the fire it can't grow. And it's like, so we've got to give it space. We have to bring the right materials. We've got to have the right conditions to enable the fire to take off, to ignite. And sometimes we're pushing the fire. Sometimes we're pouring petrol on it, going, come on.
Yeah. I think the challenge is we think it's our job to do the fire every day. But it's like, okay, if life is the fire, like, let's just slowly build it. Like, and I think that's the same with the work that I've seen with kids. I don't know if I spoke to you about this. I worked with a girl who had lots of special educational needs, and she really struggled in the classroom because everything was forced and it wasn't how it worked. And I remember she came into me and she was so upset. She said, my teacher made me stand up in front of the class and try and answer a question that was multiplying fractions. And she said, I just couldn't do it. And I was so embarrassed in front of everyone. And I said, okay, let's just sit down together and I'll teach you how to do it. So we flipped the second fraction and lovely. And she got it. And then honestly, we turned the page and it was like one of those, are they called like an etch a sketch? It was like I'd wiped her memory. It had come on because it was forcing it. And so we did it again. And we did it again. And I remember her turning to me and she's like, Laura, I've got it. But all that had to happen was we had to kind of slowly build it. There was this expectation at school that it was like, I've taught you it, you've got it, on to the next thing. That wasn't how she worked. That's not how I work. But for her, it was like gently, it was like small gains to get that moment of like, and I'll always remember it like, I've got it.
Yeah.
That's our job. That's our job.
Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my friends, Bonnie, and she was working with a young lady in school who had special education needs, and Bonnie said for a time I was trying to get her to be where she was supposed to be at the time she was supposed to be, and this was a kind of a battle. I don't think that's the word that she used, but that's kind of my imagery of what it might have been like. And then she said on one day she went out into the playground. It was time for me to come in, and this young lady was sitting on the floor, and Bonnie just went, I'm just going to go and sit with her. And she was like, I'm just going to go and be with her. And from that being with her, this friendship and this connection just ignited. And all of a sudden, it was about, well, how do I be with you in these spaces? Not try and get you to a space. And how does that being then enable us to navigate this space? But also by being with you, I can see what this space looks like to you. And then we can work out how we navigate it together. And there's something about, I think, being with ourselves and being with our art or our creativity or our desires and just sitting with them and going, so what does my desire need from me? And how can I sit with it for a moment and nurture it so that it can move forward and do the thing that it wants to do? How do I sit with it and with Pinterest and just see, oh, that's lovely. That's interesting, and build some kindling for later on when I want to start my fire, as opposed to trying to force it and make it happen. And you say it so beautifully that we've grown up in a world that conditions us to do the thing and move on to the next thing, and that thing's done and we're on to the next and we're on to the next. But our heart wants to play and dance and sing and enjoy, and it's like, how do we do that? And some people may really thrive in the next. But if you don't, how do you, as you said, get to know yourself? And perhaps that's our quest. Perhaps that's the journey that we go on. It's a quest to understand, well, who am I and how do I do things? How do I show up in the world so I can allow that to take place and to happen?
Yeah, and I think that quest is a lifelong one. It's like, let's take away the expectation. Let's take away that there's a right way to be. Like, I think one of the biggest challenges is people go like, what's the right job? What is the job, the career? Who is the person I should marry? Who should my perfect friends be? It's like, actually, it will change. It will change a million times. You will find there may be a million careers out there that would be perfect for you. So take away the quest to find the one. Like, that's not going to get you there. Maybe you'll do 10 different jobs. Maybe you'll do 100. Maybe it'll be good fun finding out. Let's see.
And I love that idea of removing the expectation, because I know as a creative that when somebody says, right, do this now, you're like, oh, and they expect it to be something that can be really challenging. But when you're in a flow, then ideas are just coming, and then you can go, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. I remember years ago when me and my friend Stephen Medlin, we worked on Jungle Run together, and one of the things that we had to do was come up with these little comedy sketches for the transition scenes. And we would come up with hundreds, knowing that most of them were rubbish. But the game for us was like, let's just keep playing. Let's just keep playing with ideas and bouncing off each other. And then we go, oh, yeah, let's use that one. Oh, yeah, let's use that one. And it was that kind of, there was a kind of an expectation, but the expectation wasn't to find the perfect one. The expectation was to keep throwing them out.
Yeah.
Even if you thought it was a bad idea, or if it was only half an idea.
Yeah.
To see how can we build on this and create something from it.
Yeah. And I love that idea of play. I think we lose that so young. It's like, I know it sounds like a cliche, but if it's a game, like, how do we play it in the best way? So I'm sitting here, I'm planning our events for the rest of the year, and I'm going like, oh, I'm not looking forward to it. Like, okay, so if sitting here, like, painting over how to design this event isn't the thing, like, how do I play with it? Do I do some research? Do I go out? Do I have conversations with different people? Like, that's my job, is to play, to get me the best ideas, to do it in a way that is more fun. And I think fun seems like a word that we lose, that we don't want people to have fun, but actually it should be fun. We should be playing. Life should be less serious, but we have to take a bit of ownership for going like, how do I bring more fun to this?
And something really interesting there, as you said that, was that sometimes we look at people who are having fun in their job, and we have a kind of a thought about that. So I catch myself sometimes going, oh, it's all right for them, or
Yeah.
oh, they find it easy. And then I go, wait a minute, I have such fun doing what I do. What's that about? And partly it's about working with purpose-driven organizations. So I make a choice that I want to work with people who want to do good.
Mm.
I want to work with people who want to have fun, who take what they do seriously, but they want to have fun too.
Yeah.
So there's play
Yeah. Yeah.
and joy in. I want to work with people that take joy in what they do,
Yeah.
because then I can have joy in what I do, and it's a real kind of this beautiful mix
Yeah.
of what happens. And sometimes we get so serious in what we're doing, and so this is how it must be done,
Mm.
that we lose all that passion and pleasure and joy and fire
Yeah.
that fuels us forward in what we do.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you can't be serious about the work you do. Like, I take my job really seriously. I think the work we do is amazing, and we have a responsibility to take that learning to as many people as we can, because it changes people's lives. I am really serious about that, and I do my job in a way that brings me joy.
Yeah.
I think we can do both.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I also think that, you know, when I'm working, whether that's facilitating with adults or with young people, if I'm just here going, and this is how we do it, and that's what you do, and this is what that is about, and this is this, and there's no joy in me, they're like, well, why am I learning all this leadership stuff if all it's going to be is this pressure and this hard work? And being a leader is tough.
Mm.
There are moments where it's really difficult,
Mm.
but there are also moments of pure joy that can sit with it. And I think part of my job is to highlight that there is joy in this, and we can have fun in this. And yes, we've got to take it seriously. We've got to learn something or understand something or create something.
Mm.
But there can be fun in that as well. And maybe the fun isn't at work, but we find the places where we have the fun, so it fuels it. Because otherwise, our lives become this weight that we're kind of trudging through, as opposed to kind of skipping and being joyously through it.
Mm. There's a book called One Life, and it flags a really good point, which is like, there's not a work you and a life you. There is just you. There is just one life. So this idea of going like, the job's got to tick all the boxes isn't how it works. Like, you have one life. So if the job's not bringing you all of the stuff, it's certainly got to bring you some of it for sure. But how do you create the life that is right for you, that brings you all of those things?
Yeah. I so know that for a long time I had this idea that there was a work me, and then there was a private me, and that these two me's were somehow different entities.
Yeah.
And then the better I got at going, well, actually, if I show up as me in all of the places, then actually it's much easier. And it was when I started doing training, I think, that it really kicked in for me, because I was like, well, if these students meet me somewhere else and I'm different, they're going to ask the question, so what was that? Was that true and authentic? Or what? Who was that was teaching us, compared to this person we bumped into in the supermarket? And I remember going, so I need to be me in all the places. I can't separate me. I might be more professional in this space than I am in this space, but I've got to be me in all of the spaces and bring all of me to those spaces.
I think we're at a really nice place where actually people are starting to value that humanity. Like, I love that I can see your backdrop. I can see where you live. I think I can hear the kids probably from a local school. Like, I know that bit more about your life. I can see the humanity and that, getting that insight into people's lives, into who they truly are, into their dog that jumps up in the background, or their partner that brings them a cup of tea. That's not unprofessional anymore. That means that I connect with you on a human level. And I think it's really important that we as leaders, we as organizations, create a space where people can show up as their authentic selves. They can show their real life. They can show their vulnerability. They can hold their hands up when they've got things wrong. They can ask questions. I believe there's no value in the mask anymore. There's no value for the individual. There's no value for the organization. We want people who can show up as them. That's why we hired them. So let's nurture that within the business as well.
Yeah, and I think that this is where some of us become caught up, is that we show up at a job interview not as ourselves, and now we're doing this job, and the real us we have to hide because we didn't bring it, and they start to go, oh, it's not how he was in the interview, or whatever that might be. So there's something about bringing ourselves to all the spaces. And I remember I was listening to a podcast when we first went into lockdown, and it was somebody talking about their team meetings now that they were having them virtually, and they had changed their policy because everybody was trying to work from their home office and recreate home office spaces that didn't exist before, and shutting the family out and the partner out. And they went, okay, we're now going to do our meetings at the kitchen table. Go to the kitchen table, take your laptop and do the meeting there. Bring the kids in, bring the partner in, and allow the pets in. Allow your life to be here so that we can see what your life is and your life can see what your work is. And so actually those things start to mix, and they start to become something greater. And they said their meeting shifted from have you reached your KPI to how are you? What's going on in your world? And then they moved into and what needs to happen next. But there was a real sense of how do we get to know the people that we work with so that we can foster them to be at their best in the work that we do with them.
I think we're at a really interesting place with that, where that is important. That's important for individuals, and if they don't get that, they will find that somewhere else. But organizations are valuing that, and the past few years have been really tough, but I think it's meant for me that my husband's not having to spend 3 hours commuting every day, so we get to spend time together. We walk the dogs together in the morning, and I'm coming up with ideas already that I've got more enthusiasm for my day. So I think for all the challenges that have come out of it, we're at this place where I think the world of work is about to change. The things we value are about to change, and in lots of ways for the better.
Yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful point, and a kind of a reminder that to bring ourselves to this, bring our fire to this, bring our spark to this, because everything's changing. It's almost like everything's up for grabs. There's a new world that's emerging. And so what's the place that we want in that world? What do we want to be doing? And if we're unsure, how do we have lots of experiences and talk to different people to create some kind of an idea of what that might be, whilst being okay with going, well, I did that and it was great, but it's not my thing. I'm going to have a look for something else and see
Yeah.
what else might be there that might fuel me in some way.
Yeah. I always remember actually you and I speaking, I think it was on a group coaching thing, and it's really easy to overcomplicate this stuff. But it boils down to, what is the thing that I really want? And am I taking small steps towards that every day? That's it. That's all you have to do. So that might be reading, it might be watching it, but it might be meditating, but there's no one thing. But once you're clear on the thing you want, the thing that brings you magic and sparkle and soul singing, all of that stuff, you can take little steps towards it every day. But create the space for it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a whole day, find a way to create that space where there is a quietness and a contemplation of, so how do I inch towards that thing? And if I don't know what that thing is, how do I inch towards experiences so I can notice what that thing is? And I think there's also the courage and the bravery to really listen to what my heart wants and really answer that call, because what our heart wants can be very different from what we think the world expects of us. And so it's like, okay, how do I honor that part of me and have the courage and bravery to do that? Laura, we've bounced around. I've loved it. I've loved our conversation. I'd love you to come back and talk more about your art. I realized that we kind of touched on it, but we didn't delve into it. So I'd love us another time to talk about your art and sort of that part of you, that world of you. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. And before we go, if people want to get hold of you, if they want to see what you do or your work, how do people do that?
I guess they can check out my creative side on Laura Jelly Designs on Instagram and on Pinterest.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you. Bye-bye.